Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dill, we said this really at the beginning of the summer. One of the most exciting aspects of Michigan's fall camp is the amount of position battles that we are seeing unfold over the next couple of weeks. Really excited for this one. The boys are going to predict what the starting depth chart looks like for this Michigan program week 1 in 2024. Now, a prerequisite to this episode, the depth chart that you see on your screen right now, this is from our lads. This is not our depth chart. We use this a lot just as visuals and also so you all don't have to just stare at our two big heads on the screen as well. So we're going to make some changes to this depth chart. This is just a visual. I can already see some Michigan fans popping off in the comment section, and that's okay. Now, as we get into this, what I'll ask the Michigan fans, drop your depth charts in the comment section. Dill, we don't even agree on our own depth chart. We're going to go back and forth with a couple of these conversations. That is really what makes this episode so exciting, at least in my opinion, as a Michigan fan. Really excited to get into it. Before we do, and as always, a massive shout out to the Michigan fans. It's been a blast talking this program over the last couple of weeks and months. And many of y'all know the boys are Michigan fans. We love talking this program. The amount of support you guys have shown, it means the world. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Much more importantly, drop the depth charts in the comment section. Have at it in the comment section. Hey, if you don't agree with our depth charts, fire away at us. This is the beauty of talking this depth chart. And Dill, without further ado, let's get into this one. Let's start at the quarterback position. By far the biggest storyline of this Michigan program. Week 1 of 2024, who's taking the first snap?
I really got to think it's Orji. And not only do I want it to be Orji, frankly, but everything I kind of watch from this Michigan team, it does seem like Alex Orji does have that momentum, that like kind of it factor, if you will, and a guy who certainly the rest of the team is kind of looking towards to be that guy. But also I think, again, you kind of think if Michigan's going to win a national title, just like they had excellent play at times from J.J. McCarthy, he didn't necessarily need to be the driver all the time, but when he needed to make big plays, he made them. I think, again, you look with not a wild depth of talent, especially in that pass catcher room, not necessarily explosive talent riddled across the field. I think you need your quarterback to at times be excellent, and I just don't know that we're going to get elite play from anyone else on this roster, at least at the quarterback spot.
Yeah, the big conversation, I probably don't feel as strongly about Alex Orji as you do. That being said, I'm going to go with Alex Orji too. And it kind of goes with what you said. You talk about the highest ceiling. What's the best version of this Michigan offense? It's an Alex Orji that is consistent throwing the football down the field. Now, for Michigan fans, what you need to be fired up about, everything we're hearing out of fall camp is that Alex Orji has been the most consistent quarterback during the early days of fall camp. Dill, if you get a consistent passer in Alex Orji at the quarterback position, you're looking at one of the more exciting quarterbacks that we see across the country because we know what he can do with his legs. But if he can threaten teams attacking that deeper third, throwing the football, this Michigan offense is going to be very difficult to deal with for opposing defensive coordinators. The only, I think, reason Alex Orji is not your starting quarterback is if you really can't put it together as a passer. And there are certainly question marks about it. Was never the most accurate passer coming out of high school. Has only thrown one pass attempt during his college football career. I think a lot of the Michigan fans said it best in the comments section. You can't be a one-dimensional offense and expect to beat teams like Oregon, Texas, and Ohio State. So that's really the only way I don't think Alex Orji will, or the only way Alex Orji is not our starting quarterback in 2024. Dill, let's get into the running back room. Fascinating conversation. I'll lead with this one because I got a little bit of a hot take to get off my chest. All right, starting running back for this Michigan offense is going to be Donovan Edwards. I just think he's the most all-encompassing. And you talk about Michigan needing weapons on offense. Donovan Edwards is one of the most dynamic weapons that you'll see in the Big Ten this year, especially with what he can do as a pass catcher. That being said, the rusher that I think leads this team in yards is going to be Kalel Mullings. And I think it's going to be a kind of evenly split backfield. Dill, Kalel Mullings, it kind of, at least in my opinion, checks every single box that Sherrone Moore is looking for in a running back. You look at what Blake Corum did so well for Michigan, that consistent running back, that it was 2nd and 6, it was 3rd and 2, we're moving the chains, keeping us on schedule. That's Kalel Mullings. He's a no-nonsense back. And I think what's most exciting about Kalel Mullings is even though he's a redshirt senior, he's only getting better at this position. I think it's important for a lot of Michigan fans to recognize that 2 years ago, when Kalel Mullings was repping with the linebackers, made that transition in 2022 to the running back spot. He's gotten significantly better as the seasons have gone on. This might be the best version of Kalel Mullings that we've seen in Ann Arbor.
Yeah, I think this will be about as two-headed of a rushing attack as Michigan's had going back for a really long time, probably pre-COVID, because even you think 2021, I mean, that was the Hassan Haskins show. For the past couple of years, it's been the Blake Corum show when he's been healthy. You've kind of had your bell cow, it feels like, at Michigan for a while. I'm not sure that'll be the case necessarily this year because both these guys need to get their touches. Again, Donovan Edwards probably gives Michigan the most explosive ability on this whole entire offense. And that's something like, frankly, at times Michigan's really struggled with and has been kind of frustrating, I think, for a lot of fans. And then you do have Claude Mullings, who runs much more in the style, as you kind of said, that I think Michigan's rushing attacks kind of built to do. So I'm kind of with you. I think this is going to be a very evenly split room. I wouldn't be surprised if they're both within like 50 or so carries of each other by the end of the year, because I think that's kind of how it should be.
And I think you might see, especially if Alex Orji's your quarterback, you might see some 2 running back sets. There is a reality, at least in my opinion, where Donovan Edwards puts it together and becomes a little bit more consistent between the tackles, attacks the line of scrimmage a little bit more. We've seen the flashes of Donovan Edwards, and he's come up in some massive moments for this Michigan program. The consistency is kind of what's kept – well, Blake Corum's kept him off the field, but also the consistency, right? I mean, there are certain plays that you look and say, we're not hitting the right hole. The contact balance isn't great. It was a small sample size, but it was a sample size. Donovan Edwards in the spring game, well, you only got, 2 drives? That looked like a different Donovan Edwards. He finally looked healthy, a little bit more physical. If we get that version of Donovan Edwards, that's going to be potentially a really fun running back to watch. Still going to – let's talk about the pass catchers in general. And let's preface this conversation with, I think Michigan goes to a lot of 2 tight end sets, which would mean only 2 wide receivers are playing. We did that a lot in 2023. But let's start with the 3 starting wide receivers. How does that rotation look to you heading into 2024?
I think that's exactly what it's going to be. And the one X factor is obviously Amarian Walker. We just don't know what he is as a wide receiver. Probably only times we've seen him play was in the spring games as more of that corner spot. So he's the X factor to me because he does have the body type, the athletic potential and traits that I think Michigan's kind of lacked at times, and that ability to go attack down the field and have a wide receiver who legit presents a monster problem in that area. So he's kind of the guy I'm looking for to do that. But at the end of the day, I still think it's going to be a steady dose of Tyler Moore and Samaj Morgan are the 2 who I think lead this team targets by quite a big distance. And then I think Freddie Moore and obviously Amarian Walker.
So if we go to a lot of 2 wide receiver sets, I'm with you. It's Tyler Morris and Samaj Morgan. That 3rd wide receiver, that X wide receiver, I'm going to go with Amarian Walker. I think you kind of said it best. Michigan is needing a kind of wide receiver like Amarian Walker who can really attack that deeper third, long, fast, solid ball skills. Yeah, he's not a known commodity, but I would say Frederick Moore is not necessarily a known commodity either. And so I think that position group's really up for grabs. We haven't heard a ton of buzz coming out of the Michigan program about the wide receiver room. I think Amarian Walker might have a shot to get on the field often in 2024. I think Peyton O'Leary is a guy that obviously we liked what we saw from the spring game the last couple of years.
Good in every spring game I've seen him play.
Dill, tight end position, Colson Loveland, Marlon Klein. Any questions?
Nope.
All right, offensive line, which is kind of sneaky. I feel like we just assumed that this would be the starting offensive line, and it sounds like Andrew Gentry is entrenched in a right tackle battle with not only Jeff Percy, who Jeff Percy, we haven't seen a ton of. It's been inconsistent when we've seen him, but also Evan Link, the redshirt freshman who came in as this long athletic body that needed to put on weight. He's up to 310 pounds. Dill, I assume you have that starting 4. Who do you have at that starting right tackle spot week 1 here?
I mean, I think it's going to be Andrew Gentry, but I do think, frankly, Evan Link showed something in that spring game. I thought him and Afobe were working together. They looked really good on that, and he was playing on that left side in the spring game, but certainly a guy who, again, has the capability and was moving guys off the line of scrimmage in the way I think you expect Michigan tackles to do it. So I do think it's going to be Andrew Gentry. I thought he had a nice spring game. I thought he looked good when he was coming in his spot duty last year in more of that reserve role. So I think it's going to be him, but I don't think you should sleep on Evan Lincoln. I think for sure he's going to be that swing second tackle off the bench.
And I'm fired up for Evan Lincoln 2025. And I know we got a 2024 season to play out. If he's kind of, because I always thought he'd be like a year 3, year 4 kind of guy. If he's a year 2 kind of guy, mean, he's going to be really freaking good in 2025 when Miles Hinton moves on. I'm going Andrew Gentry too for the reasons we've kind of said for some other positions. What is Sherrone Moore going to be looking for on the offensive line? Big bodies who can move people off the line of scrimmage. That's Andrew Gentry. Going to the defensive side of the football, this is where the conversation gets quite fascinating. Now, again, prerequisite, this is not our depth chart. We're going to kind of do that base set that Michigan's going to run, the 4-2-5 Dill. Your 4 starting defensive linemen, no questions marks about it, right? Now, I think the question is, outside of Josiah Stewart and Derek Moore at edge and Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham and the interior defensive line, what does the 2 deep look like? And I'll ask you, and I'll start here. I have TJ Guy at one of the edge spots. I have Cameron Brandt at the other edge spot.
And
now,
Keyshawn Bennett.
We'll hash it out. And then on the inside, are you leaning Eno Etta too? Because I got Rayshawn Benny and Eno Etta.
No, I think Trey Pierce. I saw a picture of him on Twitter. I don't know if anyone else did. I thought he played pretty decent in his moments last year. He's a guy I think very much going to have a big year. You know what? I still kind of wonder what exactly his role will be down because I felt like in the spring game, and he's getting heavier. He's putting the weight on that I think he needs to. But there were still some moments you were like, well, is he really going to hold up at the point of the attack on those rundowns and be able to give them be kind of an all-down player for Michigan at least this year?
It's the biggest storyline for this Michigan defense, in my opinion. And it's not the flashiest conversation to have, but you look at what made Michigan's defense so special. Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham, when they had to come off the field, it was Chris Jenkins coming in and Rayshawn Benny. I mean, the depth was incredible, not only on the inside, but at the edge rusher position too. And so what does Michigan's depth look like on the defensive line? That's a massive storyline. And I'm with you on Eno Etta. I think Eno Etta starting as a redshirt freshman on the inside is very contingent on how that summer workout went for Eno Etta because he is still adjusting. It's clear. You go back to the spring game, he's still adjusting to the physicality on the inside of the defensive line. I think this is the biggest storyline to monitor early in the season for Michigan and throughout the rest of fall camp. Look, we know this starting defensive line is going to be dominant, but what does the depth look like? And I think it's also worth noting Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant did a little interview, said, hey, we're trying to get our conditioning up because we know we might have to play a little bit more this year. Love to hear that. If we can just keep Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant on the field as long as possible, it is going to be very hard for opposing offensive linemen to deal with those two. Linebacker position, Jayshon Barnes getting very, very high marks during fall camp, but I would assume you're good with Jayshon Barham and Ernest Hausman here.
Yeah, that feels pretty obvious, frankly. I think they complement each other well. Jayshon Barham might be one of the better players on the defense, period. I think he is really good. Guy coming from Maryland who doesn't really probably get the credit he deserves, but he was dominant on the field.
Yeah, we were really high on him when he transferred to Michigan from Maryland in the winter. Dill, reading some fall camp reports, Sam Webb, 24/7 Sports, apparently described, or somebody he interviewed described Jayshon Barham as a more athletic Devin Bush. I don't know. That seems a little. That is some lofty expectations for Jayshon Barham. If it's anything close to what Jayshon Barham was just described as, we're getting an All-American linebacker in Jayshon Barham. Now, getting to the secondary, this is where it gets interesting. I'll ask you first, starting cornerbacks on the boundary, then we'll work our way inside, then talk about the safeties.
I mean, it really does sound like it's going to be Will Johnson and Jair Hill at this. And again, he's really getting some buzz. Will Johnson, obviously, is starting. Jair Hill does feel like he's starting to get that. Yeah, people really like what they're seeing from him, and he's going to be on the field a lot. I like that they brought in some depth cornerbacks for sure. I think they needed to do it. But if Jair Hill plays, that's the best version of the second.
I was exactly with you. Like, I love that we brought in Amir Hall to just push Jair Hill, not just give him the starting spot. I'm a huge fan of Amir Hall. So if Jair Hill is outplaying Amir Hall in fall camp, we're getting a very, very good cornerback too, opposite Will Johnson. It was such a similar situation to Josh Wallace, but someone like Marion Walker just didn't really step up. It sounds like Jair Hill is stepping up as a redshirt freshman. They'll go into the nickel spot. I have a feeling I know who you're going to go with, but I'll put you on the spot first. So it sounds like Jaden McBurrows and Zeke Berry are the two candidates. It sounds like Brandon Hillman is also getting some buzz at that nickel role as well. Who you got out of those three cats here?
I'm very conflicted because I am such a monster Jaden McBurrows fan. I feel like just a guy I feel like has just been part of the program for forever. And again, does kind of what they asked him to do. I just don't think he gives you the high ceiling in the way Zeke Berry does. Watching Zeke Berry in that spring game, making more plays than what I think Jaden McBurrows would ever do. I kind of think it's going to be Zeke Berry. And kind of frankly, I wouldn't be surprised to see Jaden McBurrows kind of back up a handful of different positions in this unit because I think he can play boundary. And
Yeah.
I think he can play that nickel spot. He obviously will know the defense really, really well, being in the scheme for so long. But I do kind of get the sense Zeke Berry is going to be the guy there.
That might be the reason you give it to Zeke and just let Jaden McBurrows be that utility guy that if any other cornerbacks have some problems on the boundary, you can just slot Jaden McBurrows there. I'm going to go Jaden McBurrows. And this might be one of those interesting ones where it kind of depends on what team you're playing. We'll see different kind of guys. If we're playing a little bit more of a run-heavy offense, you might see Zeke Berry a little bit bigger, physical, better tackler. If we're playing a team like Oregon or Ohio State, that's going to spread you out, maybe throw the rock around a little bit more. Jaden McBurrow is probably the better pure cover nickelback.
And that makes a ton of sense just because, like, watching how Mike Sanders still, like, perfected that, not just from, like, a skill set position, but, like, his brain and how much, like, more advanced he was in that defense, being in the right spot. Jaden McBurrows is kind of like that. I feel like he just doesn't have the athletic upside that a guy like Sanders still or even a Zeke Berry would have. So that's why I lean Zeke Berry, but that's a good point. I think Jaden McBurrow is going to play a lot of football for this Michigan team this year, just like he did last year, honestly.
That's why I lean Jaden McBurrows, because I just think Michigan historically plays the players that they trust the most, and like they'll leave someone on the bench who might have all the physical traits but just isn't as consistent. Like Michigan just gives the roles to guys who are more consistent. That's why I lean Jaden McBurrows and Dill. If we get anything close to Mikey Sandstrom at that nickel cornerback spot, I'm going to be thrilled. One of the most underrated players the whole 2023 season, not just Michigan, just nationally. Like he was one of the better players on the defensive side of the football in the country. Going to the safety spot, I think Makari Page is a lock. I think he's probably the safety that plays a lot. Now, to preface this conversation, I bet there's going to be a significant rotation, kind of like you saw last year where Makari Page and Rob Moore were the guys. Keon Sabb got a lot of burn. Quentin Johnson got a lot of burn. I would expect the safety room to kind of look like that because you got a lot of good safeties in this room. Week 1, 2024, who are starting safeties here?
I honestly think it might be Makari and Quentin Johnson. That kind of surprises me because I've always been a Jaden Mangum guy, thinking
Me too.
Be the guy to come in and like kind of be anointed like an easy starting safety spot. But the more I think about it, and the more I kind of watch from last year, I think I don't put enough respect on Quentin Johnson's name because when he was in the game, he was really, really good, not just in that Ohio State game, making the play in Ibuka, which is the thing that pops in everyone's brain, but stripping Jalen Miller in that Bama game, making plays. When he was in the game, he was really, really good. I think he might be able to ride with him.
Dude's a playmaker. Yeah, he just shows up when we need him to, and he's a guy that's been within this. I'm a huge Quentin Johnson fan. Like this is a guy that almost kind of like Mikey Barrett, where it's like you start as a scout team guy, you become an ace special teams guy, you're working your way onto the football field. When Mikey Barrett got his opportunity to start, he became one of the better backers in the Big Ten. Can Quentin Johnson be that kind of guy going into what I believe his is 6th year within this Michigan program? With all that being said, I'm going Wesley Walker. Kind of similar conversation. And again, it's kind of a pointless conversation to have here because all these guys are going to play. Wesley Walker is getting a lot of buzz during Michigan's fall camp. And I think more importantly, this dude has played so much football at the Power 5 level, whether it's at Georgia Tech or Tennessee, over 2,500 career snaps. When you have a safety with that kind of experience, you get a safety with really good instincts. And I just think, again, going back to the constant that Michigan goes to as they run this program, give me the guys that are going to do their job and do their job at a high level and be consistent with that. I think Wesley Walker is going to be that guy again. A lot of them are going to play. All of these position battles, so to speak, we know Michigan's going to rotate a lot. And you just kind of have a good feeling that Michigan's built a lot of depth. And so it's going to be competitive depth. You're going to get kind of cream rising to the top. Shout out, Dad, for that quote. Dude, we'll cut it there. Appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. Again, if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.